Let's begin. Number 6, the human cannonball. Imagine your job is to lie on a tiny fiberglass tray and get fired down an ice-coated gutter at 90 miles an hour. For fun, for glory. Welcome to the sport of luge, an activity that constantly flirts with the laws of physics and common sense. For 21-year-old Nodar Kumaritashvili, it was his life's passion. He was at the 2010 Vancouver Winter Olympics, hours away from the opening ceremony, about to take his final practice run on the Whistler Sliding Center track. This wasn't just any track, it was a monster. The fastest, most technically demanding luge run on the planet, a place where athletes had been complaining for weeks that something felt wrong. Too fast, too unforgiving. As Nodar began his descent, everything was textbook. He hit his marks, absorbing G-forces that would make a fighter pilot nauseous. His speed climbed steadily, 85, 88, 90 miles per hour. He was a blur of Georgian red and white hurtling through a tunnel of ice. But as he rocketed into the final turn, a nasty piece of engineering nicknamed Thunderbird, physics decided to collect its debt, for a reason nobody will ever be certain of. A tiny miscalculation, a slight shift in weight, a moment of lost focus that lasted less than a blink. His sled drifted a few inches too high on the wall. At normal speeds, this is a correctable error. At 90 miles per hour, it's a death sentence. The force was so immense it didn't just crash him, it ejected him. He was launched from his sled, a human projectile flying over the lip of the track and into the real world. His body, traveling at over 87 miles per hour, met an unpadded steel support pillar. The impact was instantaneous and catastrophic. Medics were there in seconds, but it was a pointless gesture. The Olympics officially opened a few hours later, with a somber moment of silence for the man the course had just eaten. A chilling reminder that sometimes the sport is more of a predator than a competition. Number 5, the wax-sealed man. Picture this, it's the 1912 Stockholm Olympics. Science is basically just a collection of confident guesses, and you're about to run a marathon in 90-degree heat. This was the situation for Francisco Lázaro, a 21-year-old marathon runner from Portugal. He was terrified of getting sunburned, a reasonable fear, but his solution was anything but reasonable. Instead of, wearing a hat, his brilliant, world-class, 5-star terrible idea was to waterproof himself. He coated his entire body in a thick layer of beef suet, a waxy animal fat. The logic presumably was that if it could keep water out, it could keep the sun out too. What he actually did was turn himself into a human sous vide bag. Your body has a built-in cooling system. It's called sweating. As sweat evaporates off your skin, it takes heat with it. It's the only reason you don't boil alive on a hot day. By slathering himself in a waterproof coating, Lázaro had effectively sealed off every single one of his sweat glands. He had just disabled his body's only air conditioner right before locking himself in a sauna for 26.2 miles. For the first half of the race, he seemed fine. But underneath the waxy sheen, his core temperature was skyrocketing. The sweat was pouring out, but it had nowhere to go. It was trapped against his skin, doing nothing but making him clammy while he cooked from the inside out. At the 18-mile mark, he started staggering. By mile 21, he collapsed, unconscious. Doctors at the hospital were horrified to find his body temperature was over 105 degrees Fahrenheit. He died the next morning, becoming the first athlete to ever die during an Olympic event. He wasn't killed by the sun, he was killed by his own brilliant idea to protect himself from it. Proving that sometimes the road to hell isn't just paved with good intentions, it's also greased up with beef fat. Number 4, A Cocktail of Death, Rome 1960. The Eternal City, full of history, art, and on this particular day, a heat so oppressive it felt like the sun was trying to personally murder you. Temperatures were soaring to 104 degrees Fahrenheit, the kind of heat that makes asphalt soft and breathing feel like a chore. It was the perfect setting for a 100-kilometer team cycling time trial. if your idea of perfection is a two-wheeled death march. For Danish cyclist Knud Enemark Jensen, it would be exactly that. Before the race, he and his teammates had taken a little something to get an edge, a drug called roniacol. It's a vasodilator, which is a fancy science word for something that forces your blood vessels to open up. The theory was simple. Wider blood vessels mean more blood flow, which means more oxygen to your muscles, which means you become a cycling god. There was just one tiny, fatal flaw in this plan. Your blood vessels also dilate naturally to help you cool down, radiating heat away from your skin. By taking a drug that artificially cranked this system to the max, and then competing in oven-like conditions, Jensen had essentially cut the brakes on his body's cooling system. He was forcing himself to dump heat he didn't have while simultaneously cooking under the Italian sun. For most of the race, he was a machine. Then, with just a few miles to go, the machine broke. His teammates noticed him weaving, looking disoriented. Thinking he was just exhausted, they yelled encouragement, even trying to hold him upright. They didn't realize they were cheering on a man whose internal thermostat had catastrophically failed. A moment later, Jensen collapsed, falling from his bike and fracturing his skull on the pavement. He died in the hospital later that day. The autopsy revealed the cocktail of drugs and heat had overwhelmed his body entirely. He became one of the first high-profile doping-related deaths in Olympic history. A grim reminder that the chemical shortcut to victory is often just a faster route to the morgue. There are very few sports where the main objective is to throw yourself down a frozen mountain at highway speeds, trusting that 2 waxed planks and a flimsy helmet will save you from becoming a red smear on the snow. Alpine skiing is a beautiful, terrifying dance with disaster. At the 1964 Winter Olympics in Innsbruck, 19-year-old Australian skier Ross Milne learned just how thin the line between dancing and disaster really is. Being an elite skier from Australia is like being a world-class surfer from Switzerland. You're already fighting an uphill battle. Milne was a massive talent, but he was training on one of the world's most brutal downhill courses, the Patrickhoefel. It was a frozen serpent of a run, known for being wickedly fast, technically demanding, and lined with very large, very unforgiving pine trees. During a practice run, just days before the games began, Milne was flying. He was hitting speeds over 60 miles per hour, dialing in his lines for the competition. But on a course this dangerous, the margin for error isn't small, it's non-existent. In a split second, something went wrong. Maybe he hit an unexpected patch of ice. Maybe he misjudged his angle by a single degree. He lost his edge. At that speed, you don't fall, you fly. He careened off the prepared course and into the dense woods that bordered the run. He didn't just hit one tree, he hit several. The impact was so violent that he was killed instantly. Ski patrol and medics were on the scene in minutes, but there was nothing to be done. His death was a brutal shock to the Olympic community, a visceral demonstration of the sport's latent savagery. It forced a complete overhaul of course design, mandating wider safety margins and catch nets. Because in downhill skiing, the difference between an Olympic champion and a footnote in a tragedy is sometimes just a few feet of empty space. Number 2, the snow groomer. You'd think the most dangerous part of being an Olympic speed skier is, well, the speed skiing. The part where you're dressed like a superhero from a low-budget sci-fi movie, hurtling down a sheet of ice at 125 miles per hour. For Swiss athlete Nicolas Bouchetey at the 1992 Albertville Olympics, the most dangerous part of his day turned out to be the warm-up. He wasn't even on the official speed skiing course. He was just taking a casual recreational run on a public intermediate slope, the kind of gentle blue square run that families cruise down to get to the lodge for hot chocolate. Weather conditions were perfect, the slopes were groomed. It was just another beautiful day in the French Alps. Except for one detail, also on the slope was a snow grooming machine. If you've never seen one, they are multi-ton diesel-powered behemoths with giant tracks and a massive tiller on the back. They are essentially tanks designed to smooth snow. They are also very large and very slow. Exactly what happened next remains a blur, lost to the confusion of the moment. But the outcome was brutally simple. Nicholas, a man whose entire career was built on processing information and making adjustments at blistering speeds, somehow collided with the rear of the grooming machine. The impact was horrific and instantly fatal. Think about the cosmic irony of that for a second. This was an athlete trained to have superhuman reflexes, to dodge invisible imperfections in the ice at speeds that make highway driving look tame. Yet he was killed by an obstacle the size of a small bus moving at a walking pace. It's a gut punch of a reminder that death doesn't always wait for the main event. Sometimes it just quietly parks itself in the middle of your warm-up lap. Number 1. The foundation of skulls. When we think of the worst deaths at the Olympics, our minds go to the athletes, the split-second mistakes, the tragic accidents on the field of play. But the single deadliest part of the modern Olympic Games has nothing to do with the competition. It's the mad, frantic, and often negligent rush to build the stage itself. The real body count isn't on the track. It's buried in the concrete foundations. Take the 2004 Athens Olympics. Years of bureaucratic delays and political infighting meant a last-minute scramble to get the venues ready. In that rush, safety protocols became suggestions and workers became disposable parts in a machine. Men worked 16-hour shifts under immense pressure. The result? A crane operator crushed when his overloaded machine tipped over. A worker falling 100 feet from the stadium roof when his safety cables failed. At least 4 workers died building the Athens dream. If Athens was a tragedy, Rio 2016 was a full-blown horror show, with at least 11 construction-related deaths officially acknowledged. Again, the pressure to meet impossible deadlines led to corners being cut with lethal consequences. A crane collapsed in high winds, killing a worker. A section of a stadium roof fell, crushing 2 men. Most horrifically, a brand new, elevated oceanfront bicycle path, built as a landmark legacy project for the Games, simply crumbled and collapsed into the sea just months before the opening, killing 2 innocent people who were just out for a ride. These victims weren't athletes chasing gold. They were electricians, welders, and laborers just trying to earn a paycheck. Their deaths aren't recorded with the same solemnity, but they represent the grim hidden cost of the spectacle. It turns out, the foundation of those gleaming billion-dollar stadiums is sometimes, quite literally, built with the bodies of those who were forced to rush the job. Number 7. The Cursed Games of '64. You already know about Ross Milne, the young Australian skier who met his end against a tree during a practice run at the 1964 Innsbruck Winter Olympics. His story was a tragedy. But what the official histories often gloss over is that Milne wasn't the only one. He wasn't even the first. The 1964 Games were, to put it mildly, cursed. Before the opening ceremony cauldron was even lit, the mountains around Innsbruck had already claimed 2 other lives. The first was Kazimierz K. Skrzypecki, a Polish-born luger representing Great Britain. During a training run on the brand new luge track, he lost control at one of the final turns and crashed, suffering injuries so severe, including a broken neck and a fractured skull, that he died a week later. Then, just days after that, the same course claimed another victim, an Australian luger named Eugen Neumann. Competing in the same event, he also crashed, sustaining fatal head injuries. By the time the Games officially began, 3 athletes from 3 different countries were already dead. It paints a horrifying picture of an era in winter sports where safety was an afterthought and the courses were designed with a lethal disregard for human error. The 1964 Winter Games were less a celebration of sport and more a 2-week-long battle for survival, as multiple fatal accidents on dangerous courses exposed the era's disregard for athlete safety. Number 8. The day the Games stopped. For 11 days, the 1972 Munich Olympics were a joyous spectacle. Billed as the cheerful Games, they were meant to erase the dark memory of the 1936 Berlin Olympics hosted by the Nazis. But in the early morning hours of September 5th, that cheerful facade was shattered forever. 8 members of a Palestinian militant group known as Black September scaled the fences of the Olympic Village, broke into the apartments housing the Israeli delegation, and took 11 athletes and coaches hostage. Their demand, the release of 236 Palestinian militants held in Israeli prisons. What followed was 24 hours of terror, broadcast live across the globe. The world watched, frozen, as a sporting event dedicated to peace became the stage for a tense hostage crisis. The German authorities, inexperienced and unprepared for such an event, fumbled the negotiations. The crisis reached its bloody conclusion at a nearby airfield, where a horribly botched rescue attempt resulted in a firefight. When the smoke cleared, all 11 Israeli hostages were dead. 5 of the terrorists and 1 German police officer were also killed. In an instant, the Olympic spirit of unity and competition was replaced by the brutal reality of political violence. The Munich massacre remains the single darkest day in Olympic history, a permanent scar that proved that not even the Games are safe from the hatreds of the outside world. So yeah, maybe the most dangerous Olympic sport is just being anywhere near the construction site. Subscribe for more reminders that glory has a body count.